Hey, it's Rachel, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit special, because it's about your gem personality persona or type. And let me just show you what they are, and there's a few ways to go about doing that. So here you go. All right. So there are four main personality types or personas based on the gem theory. That's Ruby, there's Sapphire, there's Pearl, and there's Emerald. I'll be diving deep into each one of them as this video continues. And why is it important? So when you're talking to each of these personality types or personality personas, they all have different kinds of reactions and different personalities that you can't really talk to a Ruby like you talk to a Pearl. You can't talk to an Emerald like you talk to a Sapphire. You have to kind of tailor your conversation, your sales conversation, your connection conversations, everything to each one of them. And of course, everyone is a little mix of everything, but there's always one that's a bit more dominant that stands out a little bit compared to every other personality or personas. So let's just see what all of them are. And you can even take a quiz to see which one you are. All right. So like I mentioned, this will sound a little R18, but most of us have like dominant and sort of submissive personalities, and you could be, 80% a Ruby and maybe 10% a Sapphire, 5% a Pearl, and 5% like an Emerald. And that's the reason why you want to tailor everything according to the dominant personality types. And so let's start off with Rubies. So they're like the 5 to 10% of the population, really self-driven and really goal-oriented. They will try to seek like new sources of knowledge and really determined and creative and very unsentimental in their approach to problem solve and problem find. They're usually the kind of people who are like actors, scientists, entrepreneurs, trainers, and basically any vocation that they commit to because they kind of commit to like their profession. They also have the unique ability to see things from other people's point of view. And they're really observant and they make really quick and logical decisions. They act fast, but they usually stay detached because they just want to get things done quickly, like pa pa pa. And they have a really creative mind, and then the idea is they always put their ideas into action. They try things out, they just take action, shoot for the stars kind of thing. So they're also pattern finders, like they organize pretty all right. It's not very, very organized like the Emerald, but fairly organized, and they think really long term. So the idea for them is they finish what they start, and the next thing is they demand competence from the people they manage, and they're kind of really skeptical. So when it comes to rubies, because they're skeptical, so you got to show them, especially like as a, I guess, employee, or if you're the one being managed by a ruby, you got to show them that, hey, I know how to do things. I'm competent in my job. All right. So this kind of people are usually the leader of the group. They really get like they're bored if they're not challenged, and mediocrity is worse than failure. So they don't like to be mediocre. Like they'll rather fail and then succeed, or they just want to keep trying until they reach their success. And so they don't like having like those kind of normal lives, and yeah, it's just awful for them. They love to strategize, so they're probably quite good at strategizing, business growth and probably strategy games too, and so they're really guarded with sharing information, but really direct in their communications. So at times, for example, let's say that you're going up on stage and you've got a personnel that comes up and say, hey, you got a snot in your nose. They're just really guarded in their communications, and they tell you directly what's wrong, what's going on. So they just want to know the bottom line and they hate small talk. So these people, you definitely don't find them like gossiping about shit. They don't gossip and they don't find a point of it, which is why I personally do love them a bit more. When sold to, rubies secretly ask themselves this secret question, which is, what can your solution do for me? And I can give you a few examples of rubies, which is like Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, Kanye West, Simon Cowell, in Britney Spears, the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. There's Spock in Star Trek. There's Archie Bunker in All in the Family, and there's Miranda in Sex and the City. And these guys are basically the ones that when you talk to them, they're really impatient. They just want to know the end goal of what you can do for them. So make sure you get to the point. Make sure you get to the end goal pretty quickly. All right, we've got sapphires, which are around 30 to 35% of the population for those who are a bit more dominant in sapphire. They're very emotionally driven. They're like the life of the party, and they're deeply insightful and very temperamental. So because of that, they're pretty resourceful during crisis, and they excel in business because of their flexibility and the adaptiveness. And they take a practical approach to life. They love to have fun. And despite their impulsiveness, their flexibility is one of their greatest unique ability. So they're really quick-witted and they make decisions quickly, but the difference is they make them emotionally. So you gotta have an emotional connection to a sapphire. If not, they won't be inclined to say yes to you. And they're independent thinkers who prefer immediate action rather than making plans for the future. They don't try to make plans, they just do. They just take action and then, adapt and be flexible and turn in the middle if they do need to. Vitality is their middle name and drama is their default. So they basically like to make drama, cause drama, spread drama because they are just so excited and so woo by everything. And they're highly assertive, but they often don't finish what they start because for them, starting a new thing is so exciting, but then completing it is not as exciting. And their passion and their charm are two key pillars of influence that are responsible for their success in life. And they're really they're basically the people who, you can say, talk a lot, and they talk a lot about different things. Like they do have small talk, and they do have their own charm or their own quirky ways. They just talk as if that there's no end. And because of that, you can tell that, some people do like people who talk a bit more. So through that, you can tell that some people do like their sapphires in them. Anyway, their temperament emerges as the influencer of the group. So they do get bored easily if they're not challenged, similar to the rubies. They prefer action over strategy, and they have the gift of gab, meaning that they are really, really good at talking, and they also usually have a bit of humor in terms of the dynamic sense of humor when they're talking, which is why not all, but a couple of the sapphires they are pretty attractive because of how they talk, and how they communicate with others, which makes others think that they are easy to get along with in that sense, and easy to talk to. And so this type of temperament tends to be kind of open with their sharing information and very direct in their communications and when communicating with others. And so let's say that if you're going on stage to do a presentation, then this personnel will come and talk to you and make a joke about the snot in your nose. I'm personally not a joke person, so I probably can't do that, but basically they'll make a joke about, that particular snot. They like to get to the point fast, but they love small talk, as I mentioned. And so when sold to, sapphires secretly ask themselves this primary question, which is why? Why is your solution best for my needs? For example, of sapphires, we've got Wolfgang Mozart, You've got Bill Clinton, Katy Perry, Madonna, Teddy Roosevelt, Jennifer Lawrence, Angelina Jolie, the Lion in The Wizard of Oz, Captain Kirk in Star Trek, Gloria in All in the Family, and Samantha in Sex and the City. And then we've got the pearls. So honestly, I love these personality type people as well. They're usually 15 to 20% of the population. They're dedicated to fairness, and they're heart-centered communicators. So they're really enthusiastic, they're imaginative, and they really know how to empathize with people because they communicate with the heart. They're really caring, they're really respectful of other people's beliefs, and they're very community-minded as well. So they just want to do what's best for everyone. All right. But because of that, sometimes they get taken a little bit of advantage of because they try to always think for others without thinking for themselves, which is why they do need a little bit of the other personas or personalities to supplement that, and so they don't always get taken advantage of. They make decisions really slowly but really emotionally because obviously you see that they're heart-centered. So if you want to, sell to a pro, then you've got to connect with them slowly because they don't make decisions quickly, and it might take a lot more time convincing a pro compared to the others, especially if you don't have the deep emotional connection yet. And so what they want to do is always to make a difference and have an impact. And they're devoted to their friends and their family, whenever they face conflict. They're passionate about their beliefs, and they're willing to be diplomatic about differing opinions. So they don't insist their opinions on others, unlike a few of the other personas, because Ruby is definitely, you better listen to me because I know that's correct. All right, going on, they also want to make a difference in the world by sharing the ideas and feelings with others they respect and to those who respect them. So they're usually like the negotiator of the group, like they're really kind, generous, and put people before profits, which is also part of the reasons why they're really successful, because when you're conducting a business or building a business, it's all about, helping others to achieve what they want, and then money will generally come. If you try to get money down in the first hand, that's usually not gonna happen. Pros are usually, they make decisions really slowly and really emotionally. They have the unique ability to disagree agreeably, which is one of their strongest ability as well, because they're driven by their compassion. And so when you're talking to a pro, you know that that person respects your ideals and respect your opinions, and then they'll just say, hey, we can agree to disagree kind of thing. And so there's no hard feelings between their conversations, and it's all going to be all right to have differing opinions. They're really open, but they're indirect because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So for example, when you're going up on stage and then a pro personnel will come up to you and say that maybe you want to just check yourself in the mirror again just to make sure that you are all prepared and looking great before you go up on stage. So they won't directly point out that you got a snot in your nose, all right? And so when sold to, pros secretly ask themselves these primary questions, which is, who else have used your solution to solve my problem? And who are you to care about me so much? Because they want to focus on emotional, on people, and because of that, they ask these kind of questions. Examples of pros include Oprah Winfrey, Abraham Lincoln, Arianna Huffing, Martin Luther King Jr., you got Johnny Depp, Bruno Mars, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Tin Man in The Mother of Oz, and Dr. McCoy in Star Trek, Edith in All in the Family, and Carrie in Sex and the City. Finally, we've come to Emerald, which is 40 to 45% of the population. Really practical, really assertive, and they take a lot of personal responsibility and integrity. They make up the largest part, but somehow most people find it most difficult to talk to them because they find a lot of meaning in rational ideas and have an analytical approach to problem solving. They also don't like to be told that they're wrong, which is half of the reason why they're hard to talk to, because they just don't get it. Like, they will never accept that they're wrong. So they're really committed to the daily rituals, and they're known to be really punctual and organized. And personal responsibility and integrity, which I mentioned here, are like the core values. So they're really clear, they're really concise thinkers. They want to be the most useful social unit to where they belong. So they have a unique ability to make decisions really logically, but really slowly, which means that these guys are hard to convince too, because you got to convince them on the logical part, give them all the analytics, and then they try to make sense of it. And then if they think that it makes sense, then they might buy from you. But if they don't, they will never. And their unique ability, so that's so they've got unique ability to make decisions logically and slowly, and they prefer projects over people because they just find it difficult to get, I guess, like an emotional connection. And they do really well in projects because of their analytical ability. So it's natural that they prefer projects over people. They have the tendency to be abrupt when things don't go their way, and they love to create processes and routines that's going to predict their lifestyle. So you find these people are the ones that's doing all the SOPs, all the procedures, policies, things like that for the company. The most important thing is they hate uncertainty. So if you can convince them that they're gonna have certainty, then they're more likely to listen to you. But if there's still gonna be uncertainty, I'm sorry, they're not gonna listen. All right. And then they are basically the analytical of the group. They look at charts, they look at numbers, they look at pretty much anything that they could analyze. And they got really great attention to detail. But because of that, they might forget the core objective of the task. They're super stubborn, and they tend to favor the idea of measuring twice and cutting once. So they're exact opposite of sapphires, because the sapphires are like ready, fire, aim. And then this emerald is kind of like ready, aim, fire. So emeralds, they are also guarded in sharing information, and they're kind of indirect in their communications. And so with that, when you are about to go up to the stage and an emerald comes to you, and they'll just be like, maybe you want to, before you go up on stage, just make sure that you check everything, including your eyes, your nose, your mouth, just to make sure there's no food in the mouth. And they kind of like don't tell you exactly what's wrong, but they'll warn you about it. They're highly reliable, resourceful, and they hate to be wrong. So that's why I don't tell them they're wrong. You just have to convince them some other way and let them convince themselves that they are wrong. When Soto Emeralds ask the question, how can your solution solve my problem? So they focus a lot on the how, which is why they take so long just to make a decision. And examples of these guys are George Washington, Taylor Swift, Jessica Alba, Jimmy Stewart, Queen Elizabeth, Natalie Portman, Beyonce, George Bush, Senior Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, Scotty in Star Trek, Michael in All in the Family, and Charlotte in Sex and the City. And so if you are curious to know which is your more dominant and more, I guess, submissive personas or personality types and all their percentages, you could try to take this quiz and find out what gemstone are you. But after talking you through this, basically you want to know there's a way to sell to all of them. And there's a lot of like entrepreneurs that do stage selling. And obviously when you're on the stage and you're selling to the masses, then there's gonna be a huge lot of people from each of those personas. So you gotta know how to sell to all of them. And usually the ones who make decisions a bit more slowly, they require quite a bit of follow-up. And the ones who make decisions a bit more quickly, they don't, and they could buy right away. But the idea is when you're selling a presentation, when you're making a presentation to sell, you want to start off with the rubies because they are just the ones to, wanting to tell you to get to the point, all right, out of here, all right? And then so you want to start off with what? What is your product? What's that gonna do for the people? What's that gonna do for the rubies? And then after that, you want to go to the why because that's the next fastest to make decision, which is the sapphires. And so you want to tell them why. Why is the solution best compared to every other solution there for their needs? What's so different about you? Why are you the one who's best for them? And then afterwards, you want to move on to the pearls because they make the decisions that fastest, but they need the emotional connection first, which is why you're trying to build emotional connection at the first two parts. So you're going to tell them, who have you helped? All your testimonies, all your social proof, or your, who else have used a solution? And then you're going to tell them that, hey, because I care for you a lot. Who are you to care about me? Like, you care about them because you want to make an impact. You want to change their life. You want to help them to become more healthy, have better relationships, earn more money, save more money, whatever that case is. So that's what you want to do as your third part of the presentation. And then finally come to the how, because you need the how to, briefly, or even the whole thing would be fine, to convince Emerald Eric to even think about working with you. You just have to make sure that it's well analyzed, that you showed him all the facts and figures, you show him everything that he needs to analyze it himself and convince himself that you are what he needs. All right. And so if you like this kind of videos, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you want more tips on living out your best life and value-driven content, my social media links are up on the top right-hand corner of the page. And I wish you an amazing day. All right. See ya.